Now it's our time for our interview with Maria. Welcome, Maria.
Hey, Lindsay.
How you going, my friend?
I'm
Hey,
going
Maria.
good. How are you?
Nice to have
Hey,
you here.
Scathy.
It's good to have you here.
Thanks. Good to be on.
I love the theme that you have selected for us today. Myths about
Yeah, it's an
anger.
important topic.
Yes, tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about it. So, why is that a thing? Do you see lots of people that struggle with anger as a because I'm not a very angry person myself naturally. And when I'm angry, I go to God and He helps me. But I'm naturally not, I cannot say that I have an anger issues. But I have met a lot of people that do have. Do you see them frequently and often in your
Yeah,
practice?
absolutely. I all the time. I think anger is one of the most common emotions that people struggle with. In a sense that it hurts them, it hurts other people, and it's also really misunderstood as well.
How so?
Well, there's a lot of kind of myths, I would say, that are kind of circulating about anger. Even within the field of psychology, a number of those I'd like to chat about, and it's good to kind of bring them to light because a lot of newer research is showing, hang on, anger doesn't actually work the way we've been talking about it for the past,
Okay.
10 years or so.
So what has changed in our in how psychologists were interpreting or treating or working with anger and how to regulate anger? What changed for the past 10, 20 years? What are we doing different today than compared to what we used to do before?
Well, something that you may have come across, I'm curious to know if you have or not, is this idea that anger is healthy as long as you express it. So this idea that, when you shove it down, it causes a lot of problems. But if you just let it out and express it, you're going to be okay. I don't know. Have you guys come across that?
I think so, yeah.
I have in ways, but I think that the thing is how you express it, because you can express anger in pretty harmless ways. I remember Mr. Rogers, for example, so one of his shows, he would say he would express his anger when he was angry. He would go to the piano and would be playing all of the grave notes. And that would make him feel better.
Yeah.
I have read, books saying, instructing parents to say to their children, look, if you want to express your anger, you can go punch your pillow, but never direct that expression of anger towards another human being. So, is there any wisdom in that? Okay, it's important to express, but how to express is actually even more important.
Yeah, you've raised a good example. What you talked about with the parent and how they were communicating with their child is basically called redirection. So it's redirecting that child to let their anger out on somewhere else. But the thing with the research, it actually shows that when you experience frequent anger, no matter how you express it, whether you express it outwardly or hold it inside or redirect it, just the experience of getting angry a lot is going to give you health problems.
Yeah.
No matter how it's expressed. You're going to get higher rates of heart disease, higher blood pressure, chronic inflammation, poorer mental health. The reality is no matter how you express it, anger, when you experience it chronically, will put your body in a state of fight, flight, or even shut down, freeze, but you're still in that overactive stress response. So, regardless of how you express it, the health problems are still there.
This makes me think of a Bible verse that says that the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So what would you suggest going forward for people who have chronic anger issues? How can they handle that other than expressing?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because so far this is all sounding really gloomy.
Yeah.
But I think we've commonly thought of it as, we can either shove our anger down and, that will make us just bottle it all up, or we can find, different ways of letting it out. But the reality is there is a third choice.
Yeah.
That we don't often talk about. And that's actually learning how to turn the volume down on our anger. How to not get rid of it, not shove it down, not just express it in many different ways, but actually how to reduce it. And to do that, it's helpful to really understand a few different things about anger.
Okay, all right. Let's move. Let's talk about them because I'm very interested. So, how do we turn the volume down, and what we need to understand first before we put it in practice?
Yeah. So there's a few different things I want to talk about. One is based on this myth that it's other people that make us angry. It's other situations that make us angry. When in reality, a big part of anger is not the other person or the other situation, but it's the way that we're perceiving that person or situation. Okay. And a big part of this is based on our expectations of the way things should be. Okay. A major kind of driver of anger is centered around this word should. So I'm just going to give you a really typical example of anger. Imagine you're, running late somewhere, and then you get stuck behind someone who is just driving in all sorts of strange ways, right? And for some people, this aggravates them more than other people. And generally the ones that get angry are the ones that have this kind of rigid expectation of, people should always drive well. I should be able to just get through. And this kind of expectation, when reality doesn't match, can make us really angry.
Very interesting.
So part of that is kind of being able to shift our expectations when talking about traffic, recognizing, hang on, people don't always drive well. People are not robots. They are strange and complex and do all sorts of funny things. And I can't always expect that my driving experience is going to be perfect. I'm probably going to meet all sorts of strange people on the road. And just having that kind of level of acceptance is part of what lowers our anger.
So it's managing the expectations of what the ideal world in our mind is versus the real world, and just accepting the fact that, hey, things are going to go out of control, things are going to go wrong, and that's totally fine. It's okay. That's part of the human experience.
Yeah, so absolutely. Acceptance is a key word there.
And I guess the flexibility that comes along with that.
Yeah. That's another good word, flexibility, right? Because a major fuel for anger is rigid expectations. Sure. So being able to be flexible.
Right, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So in order to turn the volume of our anger down, the first thing is to really recalibrate our expectations. Ask ourselves, okay, what are the shoulds that are floating around my mind, and what's wrong with them? Perhaps I am expecting too much about a certain circumstance, and I'm getting frustrated when that deviates from the ideal, even in a minimal way. What's the next thing we need to understand so we can really start putting that anger under control, not letting it dominate us?
Another thing to understand is how our language is shaping our anger. So when we think of the way that we speak about things and we think about things, or just language in general, we often think that we use language to describe.
Okay.
But in reality, language doesn't just describe our feelings. It actually shapes them. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
coming back to the traffic. I'm, driving or just running late. This person is kind of holding me back in front of me. I'm feeling frustrated, and I begin to speak to myself in my head, and I might begin to use words like, this is horrible. I'm going to be really late. Everything is going to be ruined. This day is ruined. I'm using this really emotionally loaded language.
Yeah.
But I can actually turn the volume down on my anger by shifting my language to something that's just more neutral, this person is driving really strange, and that's really frustrating. It is really inconvenient. Yeah. It's annoying, but I can also handle it.
So kind of
by that language.
Instead of catastrophizing, just really reining it back in and being okay, let's be a bit more reasonable about the kind of language that we're using here.
yeah,
Is that what you-
decatastrophizing,
Yeah.
right, with my language.
Yeah.
And recognizing that that language that I'm using, I do have control over it.
Yeah.
I can shift the ways that I'm speaking to myself, and that is going to turn my anger down
You know-
when I practice doing that.
You know what I do sometimes when I find myself stuck in traffic, and this is usually like on a Saturday morning when I'm already late to church.
Yeah.
I'll be driving along, I'll be late to church, and I'll be frustrated at the people who are driving slow in front of me, and I tell myself, you know what, it's Sabbath, it's a day of rest, everyone's allowed to go slowly, but usually I'm meant to be at church and leading out, so it's not that great, but I tell myself it's a day of rest, it's okay, and like just doing that on a Saturday morning helps retrain me to make my driving experience in general a lot more simple. Like, nobody's in a rush, everyone just calm down. Lindsay, calm down. So that's what I do.
Yeah. That's some good self-talk there.
Yeah.
But Maria, let me ask this question. You're talking about these really amazing skill of us using words to de-escalate our own feelings by labeling our emotions from the extreme side of things to like a more, milder emotion. So instead of saying, oh, I'm fuming, I'm so angry, it's just like, hey, okay, I'm upset, it's okay, and have to go. But the question that I have is, can we use that same tactic, I guess I can call it that, so we can help other people regulate better? So when we see that someone is getting really, really angry, is it helpful to use words and say, acknowledge what they're feeling, but then kind of throw in some words that will help them to de-escalate?
That's a really good question. And I like that, you kind of saw that side of it. So look, I would say that primarily this is something that happens internally.
Okay.
A person is individually responsible for their anger, and regardless of how another person speaks to them, like they're going to have a choice on whether or not, they kind of begin to take that ownership over their anger. Look, but it's something we might talk about another time is, maybe next time we can talk about, co-regulation. Yeah. And how the way we kind of approach another person can either escalate or de-escalate their emotions. Because I think that's a really good topic.
Yeah, awesome.
And what about that idea, are there people that think like actually, because when people are angry, and we can see these, angry people at restaurants and stores, and often they get, as a result of that anger, you have that idea, like if you don't complain, you're not going to get what you're entitled to or get your rights. Is there a common thought, that idea of like, look, if I'm angry, I can actually get things done that I cannot get done if I'm, playing too nice?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people have learned to use anger as a tool. And I think that's, can begin in early childhood. It might have gotten them what they wanted when they were young at some point. And so they've learned to use it as a tool. And look, the reality is that in the short term, anger will get you what you want. If you yell at your kid, you can scare them into doing something. If you, use anger in your relationships, you might be able to make people bend. But in the long term, it doesn't work. These people who you use anger to try to,
Manipulate.
get them to do what you
Control
want.
yeah,
Manipulate, try to control, whatever words you want to use. Like eventually they're going to push back. They're going to grow resentful. That kid who you kept yelling at is going to start doing things sneakily in secrecy. That partner who you try to, make them, do a certain thing because you were angry at them is going to start sabotaging the relationship in other ways, maybe in a more passive way if they're not prone to like direct displays of anger. So it actually damages what you're trying to do in the long term.
Yeah, it backfires.
It backfires.
And it's so interesting because this is the difference. Like this is why God is so interested in having us to love Him based on love. This is why we're not getting thunders coming from the sky every time that we do something wrong, because God doesn't want to have a relationship based on fear with Him, but rather based on love, because it's just not sustainable. God could just like scare everybody into worshiping Him, but would that serve Him any purpose? Maria, thank you so much for bringing that. This is such a great conversation. I'll definitely be keen to hear more about it, particularly in that arena of, dealing with people when they are throwing in, outbursts of anger towards us? How do we deal with this situation? What's the best way to go about it? So we're looking forward to talk to you again next week on Wednesday. Thank you so much for dialing in today.
Thanks for having me.
It's a big pleasure from us. And if you enjoyed that question, if you have any questions in how to deal with anger or emotions, you can text us here, 0491 064669. We will send that message to you, that message to Maria, and you can explore that topic a little bit further.